Hey guys, how you going? You're here with Beau. Welcome to another interview, and we've got quite a special one actually today, a very special one. We've actually got Shingo Lavine from Ethos, who's actually come on board to have a chat about this amazing project, to share his insights, a little bit about himself, and actually the journey that Shingo and the team have been on in launching this product, and really where they're trying to go in the future. You know, as you guys know, such a big community around Ethos, not only in Australia, but globally. And I think part of this interview certainly that I want to look into is, you know, how this community has been formed. It is so strong, and really gain some insights from Shingo around not just the product, but how, you know, they've been able to resonate with so many people during its development. So Shingo, thanks so much for coming on board, and why don't you give us a little introduction?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure to talk, and happy to share all the insights I can.
Yeah, totally. No, we're stoked to have you on board. So, firstly, what I always like to ask guests, because I always think it's interesting, is what initially got you into cryptocurrencies? What is it? What actually grabbed you about Bitcoin or crypto at first to make you think, you know, this is where I want to be and this is what I want to do?
Well, I've always been really fascinated in the intersection between technology and finance, and crypto, just kind of a very surface level, was a very good fit for that interest, and so that's what really kind of grabbed me at first. But what really kind of drew me in was the philosophy behind it, behind these assets out there, and the idea of owning your own assets, the idea of self custody, the idea of controlling your digital finances and disrupting a historically unfair system were all very appealing to me, and it was a very unique approach to doing that, whereby using this decentralized approach and of organizing people together and building something greater than kind of any individual was a really powerful idea and a really powerful way to disrupt traditional trust-based systems. And that philosophy is really what drove me to read everything I could about this space and become fascinated and realize that there was a gap that I could potentially fill.
Would you say that you went down the rabbit hole once you found out, as many people do?
Oh yes, absolutely. And I think every single person who first enters this space, if they don't kind of dismiss it at first sight, and they actually start learning about it, they really start to realize how deep and how interesting and how profound the potential impact of this technology is. And I can definitely count myself as one of them.
Yeah, yeah, as can I, and I think many people have been in the same boat, especially ones that are really dedicated full-time careers and have gone into this head first. You kind of really, I think, need to have that experience to drop everything and get into this crazy space, and do this full-time. So, you touched on earlier the bridge between institutional finance and new finance, and custodianship of money. That's really what Ethos is all about, right? With the fun, with the universal wallet. But that's just, as I said in a video a little while ago, that's kind of layer one value proposition that I can see for Ethos. I see so much potential because you're really building a platform or bridge between the two. What I'd really like to know is where did this kind of idea, where did this concept come from, and how has it evolved?
Sure. This concept started, pretty simple idea. My aunt wanted to buy crypto, and it was really difficult for her to do. And she didn't understand or trust the existing players, and the space was very developer centric and difficult to understand, even for kind of really smart and driven individuals. And it was because of this that I realized that there needed to be a really safe and easy and trusted way for people to buy crypto and to get into the space and gain exposure to this kind of revolutionary new asset class. And when you look at the cryptocurrency world, there are a lot of big problems that I think that we at Ethos are trying to tackle, including accessibility, storage, fees, credible data, and we also bring the traditional financial experience and regulatory compliance to this space that often wasn't really there before. So our mission at Ethos is to build a financial ecosystem that is open, safe, and fair for everybody. And we think that we can make this happen by bringing cryptocurrency and making it available to the masses. Uh, and you know, it all started from a very simple beginning.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's exciting, and I think the story is what really is what people really resonate with is the story behind a lot of these platforms, and I think that's a very humble story considering where it started to where it's actually gotten to now. So, for those who don't know a lot about Ethos, tell us some of the main features of the platform and how they've been refined over time to where they are now.
Sure. Our main service is the Universal Wallet, which is a free way for anybody to safely store and safe keep their own digital assets. All the assets in this wallet you can think of it as your personal vault, are secured by a single digital smart key, which you create on your device. And the smart key is never transmitted over the internet, and it only belongs to you, and it secures all the different assets across all the different chains that you can store on the Universal Wallet. And this wallet is built on a platform that we call Bedrock. And so you can think of Bedrock sort of like an AWS for blockchain. And it has a lot of interesting features both for consumers and institutions. And really the idea behind that is we want to make blockchain protocols as easy to use as internet protocols. We want to bring institutions into the fold. We want to bring consumers into the fold, and we want to bring credibility to the space. And that all starts with this self-custody solution, and it expands into something that encompasses both crypto and traditional finance. And we're seeking to tackle the rapidly growing crypto financial services market, which really started with just a few players, as you can kind of see today. And I think it'll evolve into a large and complex ecosystem similar to what we see in the traditional financial ecosystem.
So this is probably jumping a little bit too far ahead in terms of this interview and where I'm going afterwards, but I'd like to just touch a little bit on Bedrock. So the way I interpret it and the research I've done on Bedrock is it's essentially going to allow traditional financial institutions to maybe exploit some of the data or capabilities that blockchain can provide, and that would actually allow Ethos to maybe expand the scope of what you're going to be providing in the future. Would that be a correct assessment?
Yeah, and a lot of what we're trying to do with Bedrock is we're trying to bring institutions into the fold, and ultimately this is largely to benefit the consumer experience. But we want to bring institutions in, and we want to allow them to expand their capabilities into the blockchain space. And we want to partner with these institutions and provide these capabilities. You know, pull in a banking partner, pull in a broker dealer partner, and our partnership with Fusion as well, and pull it all together into a unique digital and traditional financial services experience.
I think that's exciting, and I think that's what the space really needs. I think it's what the space really, really needs. So very exciting stuff. So I wanted to touch a little bit on the story, back to the story of Ethos and how it all started with Bitcoins, which is actually when I first heard of it. Tell us about some of the challenges, because I've been following this story and some of the development work you guys have done, some of the outstanding talent you've brought on the team. I mean, it's all been very strategic, but I also can see that technically some of the things must be so hard to have developed. Tell us what have been some of the biggest challenges from when it was Bitcoins all the way up to now.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for us was building a decentralized structure at scale that lets people really own and safekeep their own digital assets. And the approach that we're taking is fundamentally different than a lot of our kind of existing peers that you can see in the crypto financial services market. You can sort of think of this approach like as a decentralized Coinbase, where and nobody's quite done something like this. And we wanted to tackle this challenge while simultaneously building the Universal Wallet on Android and iOS and building a scale microservices architecture. So we're using a very modern tech stack. Docker's, Kubernetes, and GraphQL used by companies like Facebook, Uber, and Netflix. And we're trying to abstract all these different blockchains and that aren't always as thoroughly documented and tested as people may think. we ran into some issues in the open source libraries for Bitcoin, and people would expect after Bitcoin's been around for so long, and all the libraries must be tried and tested, but we ended up uncovering some bugs in the in the Bitcoin JS library, and various open source libraries that were kind of unexpected, but really telling of how early the space is and how early and cutting edge this technology really is, and kind of integrating all this technology together into a really robust and solid solution that could be trusted and scaled to millions of users around the world is one of our largest challenges.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, following the journey, it's been incredible what you guys have achieved on really on all fronts, and no doubt part of that is the talent you've brought on board. I want to touch on that. You got Stephen Corliss, you got Vishal, you got these guys that were titans really from the traditional finance space. How did you go about convincing these people and the rest of your team to come join, this really a startup in this new modern cryptocurrency space? How have you gone about recruiting such a good team?
Well, our team is always really heavily bought into the mission and vision of what we're trying to do, and we don't hire anybody who doesn't share that hunger to disrupt the status quo, and because we're truly on a mission to change the way the financial system operates, the way that the world operates. And we're a pretty unique company in the crypto space because we're simultaneously kind of a highly credible organization, which is not it's hard to find those in the crypto space, and we have a really strong group of individuals who come from really credible backgrounds and are simultaneously working on the cutting edge of blockchain technology. And we're not just saying that we're working on blockchain technology. We're very precise about what about our applications of blockchain and integrating the capabilities of the blockchain into a new type of financial services. So the kind of unique ingredients that make up this organization have really attracted a lot of the talent, and we've found that we haven't had much trouble closing people who wanted to work for us. It's it's all about finding the right person, the right cultural fit, and the right skills fit that fit what we need. And so people like Steven, like Vishal, like Tim, all these incredible people, all these with incredible amount of talent, they've all been really attracted to that vision and that mission, and they've been willing to to put in the hours in order to try and make it happen.
Yeah, that's and you can see that. I mean, as an outsider who sees the information coming through the Medium posts or the Twitter posts, and the development updates too, which I might add are so good, and it's something not enough companies are doing. So I feel like you guys are really setting a high standard, actually in doing that. So, obviously part of what you guys are doing, regulations are a challenge, right? Regulations are a challenge because you are bridging those two sectors, and regulations are something that we really don't have a lot of clarity over. And much of the world is looking to the SEC and what the SEC is going to do. Tell us about some of the regulatory challenges that you guys have had to approach, and how does that fit into future-proofing Ethos and what your mission is moving forward?
So we put a lot of thought into the regulatory structure up front, and it's not. And I think a lot of people look at regulation as sort of just another hurdle that you jump over and then you're sort of done. But that's I don't think that's quite accurate, because when you think about the purpose of regulations are to protect consumers and to protect the mom and pop investors, and that's really at the end of the day what pretty much all regulators globally are concerned about, which is this consumer protection, and that idea, that philosophy of consumer protection is something that we very much buy into, and very much something that we want to integrate into our offerings. So when we thought about our regulatory structure, there's a lot of problems that get solved by this idea of self-custody, by this idea of letting people secure their own assets, and empowering people to essentially be their own bank. And this is a very unique strategy that benefits both the consumer and the business. So on the consumer side, their funds can't be frozen. They have absolute authority over their funds. We can't we can't do anything with their funds. No intermediary can do anything with their funds, and that gives them a lot of flexibility and control, and makes transactions, across borders and internationally very flexible and highly secure. But then when you also look at it from the business side, for broker dealers or custodians or clearinghouses and wealth managers, this approach is really a game changer for the liquidity and counterparty risk that exists in the space right now. So when you have a structure where only 2% of your assets are in hot storage and the rest are all in cold storage, that presents a large liquidity risk for a counterparty. And so not if there's ever a run on the bank, or if there's ever a lack of buyers or sellers in a structure like that, that presents a lot of risk for the consumer. And if you think of it from kind of a traditional kind of leverage ratio that that banks are required to abide by, it's kind of a non-starter for a lot of regulated partners, and a lot of the kind of regulated institutions that we've talked to have expressed this concern. But this idea of self-custody, where the user is always in control of their assets, there's no liquidity risk there. The user always has their assets, and there's no counterparty risk because the user who is the one who actually wants to buy this asset doesn't mind being exposed to the volatility of this asset, because that's pretty much why they're buying this asset. So the self-custody solves a lot of stuff from that point of view. And then on our side, we're not a custodian. We don't have to safe keep a user's assets. We don't have to worry about if we're going to get hacked. We don't have to worry about all that, and we can just focus on building a very secure system for these users to get the best possible user experience using their self-custody vault, if that all makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And here in Australia, just touching on regulations, we're kind of lucky because our government has been quite progressive in terms of outlaying maybe just some basic frameworks around ICOs, around tax and various things, just enough to kind of help the industry to innovate, but not to clamp down on it too much. But from an outsider's perspective, the SEC, that's obviously it's a beast. The United States is a huge country, and a lot of countries look to the US for regulations. Have you found, because Ethos is such a global product, have you found, obviously, some countries being a little bit more easy or progressive in terms of their regulatory stuff, and how much global regulations do you guys really have to consider with your product?
I think for the most part, people are kind of looking in the wrong place for that kind of clarity, because I think a lot of the conversations that we've had that are the most interesting aren't with the regulators, but are with the businesses themselves. And for example, we talked to a broker dealer who was really worried about dealing with a centralized exchange because there's a lot of volatility risk by them, because they would have to put up a lot of capital, often in the form of different cryptocurrencies, in order to trade in real time and offer their clients crypto trading capabilities. And this volatility risk is pretty significant to a firm like that, especially a regulated firm, which is oftentimes why you don't see these kind of regulated broker dealers getting into the space very often. And oftentimes, if you do see a regulated broker dealer get into the space, they split it off from their broker dealer entity. So it's from a legal perspective, the model can be de-risked, and that's a lot of what we're doing, is de-risking that model. I think the regulators are really taking a wait and see and learn about this space approach, which I think is really healthy, to drive forward this innovation. So I think for the most part, I'm not sure if we need to really wait for governments to say something or another. And I think the only thing we should hope for from the governments is more healthy and progressive regulation, which is, for the most part, what we've been seeing thus far.
That's good. That's good to hear, especially from people obviously in the coalface like yourself that's directly going through this. I'm going to jump into the Universal Wallet, where it's up to in terms of development. Are you comfortable sharing where Australia fits into that equation?
Well, right now where we're at with the Universal Wallet is we've released it to an extended product council, so to over 2,000 Ethos community users around the globe, and they've been giving us a ton of really, really useful feedback. And we're seeing people post screenshots and social channels, and we've received very little negative feedback. Almost every single person who uses the wallet really loves it. And what we want to go for is we're striving for a higher level of excellence and a higher level of quality than just trying to rush out a product to market when people when people are asking for it. And while that might not be the people, some people may not like that. I think at the end of the day, after we release the wallet, people will be really happy that we took the time up front to ensure the security, to ensure the usability of this wallet, and Australia is high up on our list for places that we want to expand the wallet to.
So touching on Australia, there's a really strong Ethos community in Australia. We love Ethos. A lot of people are hanging for it. A part of that is because a lot of people, we're lucky we have good exchanges in Australia, but a lot of people just want a very easy solution to store their cryptocurrencies. I myself, I've done guides and tutorials on setting up tracers and ledgers and things like that. But for the average person, that is complicated. It is complicated. How do you guys see, from your perspective, Australia in terms of cryptocurrency adoption and the community here?
In my opinion, Australia has always seemed very, very progressive in their position on cryptocurrency, and they've taken a very healthy stance and have established a fairly robust regulatory structure, which is something that we very much welcome. The more clarity that a government can provide, the better. And so long as it doesn't stifle the kind of cutting edge innovation that's happening in this space, it's all very good steps to see. And I'm confident that as long as the regulators understand this space and meet players like us, they will form intelligent and fair regulation that protects businesses and consumers alike. And I think Australia is ahead of the curve in that regard. And you can see that in the stuff that's already happened in Australia, and the way that they've been recognizing it from a tax perspective, from a legal perspective, and from kind of a asset management perspective. All their things tend to be in the right direction, and it's good to see that regulators are seeking to understand actually how this technology works before they slap arbitrary regulations on it. And so for that reason, Australia is ahead of the curve in that regard. We want to eventually expand our operations to better service people there, not just from a wallet self-custody perspective, but also from a financial services perspective as well.
Oh, that's very exciting. That's very exciting. I think, I know that 10x have actually established an office in Sydney. I believe they've got a couple of staff here. So I think they're seeing Australia as well as a good home base. And touching on our government, I think we're really lucky because Andreas Antonopoulos actually came to Australia, I believe, back in 2014 or 2015, and actually spoke to our government. And I have no doubt that probably had a pretty big influence on them at the time because he's such a smart guy. All right, well, you obviously can't touch on exactly when the wallet's going to be released. You still got more work to do. But to the audience, just so you guys know, I have actually tested the application. I am one of the lucky 2,000 people that have played with it, and it is awesome. So it's definitely worth the wait. So Shingo, in terms of the Ethos application itself, right? So I'm someone that is in crypto full time. I use crypto for business. There are a lot of challenges. What I want to know is how you guys are looking to grow both the business to business side and the business to crypto side. Oh, sorry, the business to consumer, my bad.
Everything's business to crypto. Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to build a really inclusive traditional financial services ecosystem. And our vision is to open up, the trillions in assets that exist in the traditional space, and kind of have that accessible and fungible between these two different worlds that are really air gapped right now. And the way to do this is by legitimizing cryptocurrency as an investable asset class, which Vishal can talk a a lot about the modern portfolio theory and how cryptocurrency actually fits into that from a prudent investor's perspective. And we want to partner with regulated financial institutions like Fusion Financial, which was started by many of the same principles of Ethos, and in developing credible investment models and research to enable measured and effective investment decisions in this space. And I think that's where we really differ from a lot of the people in this space right now. I think a lot of the models that I've seen right now are really kind of a quick buck model where they're not really taking the best interests of the consumer in mind, and you see a lot of people kind of investing over their skis, investing more than they can afford to lose in this space. And Fusion, as a fiduciary, it has a legal obligation to provide to be in the best interests of the consumer, and that's a very conscious choice that we made, because we wanted to provide something that truly helps the user and truly helps the user do what they want to do and help them understand this industry and the traditional financial space as well. People have been talking about financial literacy for a really long time, and now with crypto coming across the transom, it's going to become even more complicated when you add crypto into the mix, and helping people understand all that it's really is really important. And so on the business to consumer side, our long-term goal is to open up kind of traditionally accredited investment options to non-accredited investors through a people-powered approach. And so a lot of these financial services that are often only open to the 1%, we want to bring them to people globally, and provide the same level of access that people have in developed nations and in places that have really strong financial services, and provide that everywhere, since blockchain is borderless and blockchain doesn't care where you are, and you can create unique investment structures and pooled investment structures that can make these models viable, and that blockchain really enables a lot. And on the business side, there's a lot of, we want to bring in ethical and fair businesses into the fold as well. And we've been seeing that there's a lot of businesses and regulated institutions that have a lot of interest in the crypto space and a lot of interest in becoming and going into the blockchain space, and want to differentiate themselves from what people have traditionally kind of boxed into the the Wall Street bucket, which is and they've seen this trend of millennials and myself included starting to lose trust in the financial institutions, but a lot of these financial institutions are seeking to many of them are ethical, and many of them want to operate in an ethical fashion, and they see a tremendous business opportunity in the blockchain space. And I think what we want to do is we want to bring in those good actors into the ecosystem and provide that services to everybody.
Now, I remember recently you were talking about how you guys have actually developed your own crypto payroll system to pay your employees. Tell me, is this ever going to come to Ethos as a product for people to be able to use?
There have been discussions about a product called Ethos, but
that's good. That's good. I like it.
Yeah. Right now it's just internal for our own usage. It's just a smart contract based system to do payments internally. And the larger issue in terms of payroll is that there's a lack of kind of legal clarity around how crypto payroll actually works. So we're kind of waiting for some more legal clarity around that before releasing anything else on that.
Okay, exciting. I just know the challenges. It's tough. It is tough. So if there's something out there, especially that's tied into a universal wallet and a portfolio management tool, that could just be incredible. That could be so useful. So Shingo, I'm interested to know, following what some of the press you guys have put out in terms of developments and security tokens. What I'm really interested in is, security tokens is this new kind of buzzword. It's the new vogue in crypto. We all know that securities are going to be a huge thing in the future. What are the capabilities of Ethos in relation to actually issuing security tokens?
Yeah, so the indications that we've received from regulators and also that kind of regulators have sort of been expressing globally is that as long as issuers are compliant by relevant securities laws, they don't really care if they're on the blockchain or not on the blockchain. Because securities used to be issued on paper, and then they moved to being basically database backed by central securities depositors. And I think from the regulator's perspective, they see, okay, blockchain's another medium in which you could issue a security, and if security, then it should abide by securities laws. Which I think is a pretty healthy approach on the surface too. There's some some implications of the blockchain that are different than the traditional kind of central security depositor structure that exists pretty much globally in securities and settlement systems. But overall, these signals are what we're hearing, and we've had conversations with regulators on this topic proactively. And proactively approaching them often signals quite a bit about the intentions of the approaching organization. But in terms of the kind of issuance itself, clearly there's a lot of benefits to having a security on the blockchain, and there are a lot of operational overhead costs that can be greatly reduced through a blockchain-based security issuance structure that doesn't require any trust between parties, which is ultimately what tends to drive costs up in the financial sector and tends to add kind of the ecosystem of broker dealers and intermediaries that have to exist for any security settlements. So you can imagine international security settlements, remittances, and barriers to access. And the list goes on, and all the benefits that there exist for a security on a blockchain. And what we tend to focus ourselves on in terms of this is the financial and regulatory implications of such issuances, since that is typically where we see the experience gap exists in the blockchain space in general. And what we're trying to do here is, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of different flavors of securities issuances that you can do. Most people think of a securities issuance as an IPO, but there's a lot of different kinds. There's private placements. There's all these regulatory exemptions. The alphabetical list of regulatory exemptions that the SEC has. And one thing we want to do is through this kind of blockchain-based securities issuance to bring more financial opportunities to unaccredited investors through unique legal structures, including kind of pooling and advisory services that can leverage the legal structure and relationship that Fusion Financial Advisors affords us. And I think that's where Ethos and Fusion can drive a lot of value in the financial sector, which through a real salient and true useful case of blockchain technology, and providing this unique kind of regulatory structure that allows people to gain more access to financial instruments that often aren't available to them traditionally. And in the example that Vishal always gives is whenever you see a company IPO, most of the value creation at that point is already gone, just due to the barriers that exist to becoming an IPO company. But those barriers, they exist to protect the individual investors, so that's kind of a little bit of a catch-22. But there's other structures that you can put into place to let individual investors gain access to unique investments and unique investment opportunities while creating compliant issuances and then fostering a compliant secondary market through that. And obviously, we're not going to be doing everything end to end. That's why you see there's a lot of regulated institutions in the traditional financial sector that do all that. That do all the things end to end. And I think what we want to do is we want to encourage the existing players in this space to start to take on some of those roles, some of those traditional financial roles. And that's why that's why we are solving for the U.S. first. That's why we're trying to build a regulatory compliant structure and abide by the kind of gold standard that the U.S. provides in encouraging other of our peers to do the same. And that's where I hope that this market tends to go, is towards that regulatory compliance and that mindfulness around legal structure and using that legal structure to provide the best possible consumer experience. So that's a little bit of a long-winded answer for that, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. No, really interesting stuff. So you're now operating in the United States, and I believe you're operating in Singapore as well. Singapore, obviously, being quite a progressive country as well, from certainly what I've seen with crypto. So tell us about the future ambitions, global ambitions of Ethos. Where next?
Yeah, so we're in discussions with companies globally, and we want to provide an ecosystem that bridges the financial, the financial system with the blockchain and cryptocurrencies uh, for individuals and for companies all around the world. And our intention has always been, as I said before, to abide by the highest regulatory, legal, and technical standards we can to expand that position globally. Because blockchain is not confined to a jurisdiction or region, and its implications to connect us at a financial level globally is profound. And we want to unlock that potential. And so that means abiding by the toughest standards in all regards, and looking across jurisdictions to comply by those standards. One example being GDPR. I see GDPR as a really progressive and healthy stance towards data protection. And so we decided that we wanted to implement GDPR for people globally, regardless of where they are, in order to provide the best, compliant coverage for people. And we're taking a similar stance on many of the regulatory and legal issues that tend to come up in the blockchain space in order to future-proof a lot of what we're doing. So what we see is, we're starting with the U.S. The U.S. is the gold standard in terms of financial compliance, and if you can solve for the U.S., you can solve for everywhere else. And we believe that we've solved for the U.S. and we've received the necessary licenses in the U.S. in order to expand internationally, and that's also partially why we chose Singapore as a jurisdiction to headquarter ourselves, is because Singapore is a very progressive and ethical jurisdiction that takes a very healthy approach to crypto and has provided a lot of regulatory guidance very early on that was very valuable to us. And so, Singapore is another jurisdiction that we hope to expand to very quickly, and solving for similar issues that came up in the U.S.
Exciting stuff. I know, definitely from being an outsider and seeing everything that's going on, you guys are just pushing out so much. You're delivering. You're putting out so much to the community to stay on top of updates and to really get a window into what you guys are doing, which again, like I said earlier, I think is setting a very good standard for future companies. So mate, that is it from me. A huge thanks from me to you for your time. I know the audience will get a tremendous amount out of this discussion. I know Australians are super excited for Ethos, the global release. I know I certainly am. I'll hand it over to you if you want to give out any other details, if you want to talk about any social media platforms that people can follow you on. It's over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure, and I always like to talk with people who are taking a very mature and sophisticated approach to the blockchain space, which I think is really healthy and really what's going to set people like you apart in the long term. We at Ethos, we have a very exciting July lined up. We're going to be expanding. We're hoping to expand the rollout of the Universal Wallet and start to announce our partnerships. I'll be at the Digital Currency Con in Park City, Utah on July 14th. And we hope to have some news by then. And I'm also looking forward to meeting a lot of our Netherlands community at a global launch party in the Netherlands on July 29th. So we'll see a lot of our community members there, and I'll make the odyssey all the way out to Netherlands to meet everybody.
Nice. I haven't been to Netherlands, but I would love to go. Guys, just so you know too, all the links to all the Ethos social media stuff will be down in the description. So definitely make sure you go and check it out and stay on top of the development. So again, Shingo, thanks for your time. Guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey there guys, I really hope you enjoyed that interview with Shingo Lavine. And if you did, I'm really interested in hearing your perspectives and your thoughts. And what did you get the most out of that interview? Did you learn anything more about Ethos that you didn't know previously? Or did you learn a little bit more about the industry? Make sure to leave it down in the comments below.
And also, if you liked the video, then likes are always really appreciated. If you didn't like the video, then you can dislike it as well. If you really want to come on board and you're not subscribed already, make sure to smash that subscribe button to see awesome future content. Also, be sure to check us out on Twitter and on our community forum, which is on Reddit, and also our website, which is cryptocurrencyoz.com. There'll be links down in the description to all of our social channels. Just want to say thanks a lot for watching, guys. I always appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch my content, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Cheers.